ESG ratings credibility gap is closing, not for every company. For years, ESG ratings rewarded companies that told a good story. Two simultaneous changes in 2026, a major methodology overhaul and a new European regulatory regime, are tilting the system toward companies that can prove it. More than 90% of investors consult ESG ratings at least once a month, despite reporting limited trust in what those ratings actually measure. A combination of high dependence and low confidence that has defined the market for the better part of a decade. Two developments in 2026 are beginning to resolve it, but the resolution will not feel the same for every company navigating it. The first is MSCI's version 5 methodology update, launched in March 2026, which expands financial materiality weighting, increases data coverage with hundreds of new data points, and introduces full score traceability for the first time. The second is the EU ESG ratings regulation, formally Regulation EU 2024-3005, which comes into force on July 2, 2026, placing all ESG ratings providers operating in the European Union under direct supervision by the European Securities and Markets Authority, ESMA. Together, these changes represent the most significant structural tightening of ESG credibility standards the market has seen. What the EU's new ratings regulation actually requires. The EU ESG ratings regulation does not directly regulate companies, it regulates the providers who rate them. But the downstream effects on corporate disclosures are real. Under the regulation, providers must publish their methodology, manage conflicts of interest, and meet governance standards comparable to those applied to credit rating agencies. Providers that were already operating in the EU on January 2nd, 2025 must notify ESMA of their intent to continue operating by August 2nd, 2026, and submit a formal authorization application within 4 months of the regulation's July 2nd effective date. The practical consequence for companies is this. The providers rating your sustainability performance will face formal scrutiny over how they arrive at those ratings. Providers unable to demonstrate methodological rigor may exit the EU market. Those that remain will publish more transparent methodology documentation, which means the criteria your company is being evaluated against will be visible in ways they were not before. That transparency cuts both ways. Gaps between what a company discloses and what the methodology actually requires will be easier to identify. The divergence problem that neither change fully solves. The structural limitation of both the MSCI update and the EU regulation is that they do not eliminate the fundamental disagreement between providers over what constitutes good ESG performance. Research published in the Review of Finance established that the average correlation between 6 major ESG rating agencies is 0.61, far below the 0.99 correlation seen in credit ratings. Measurement differences account for 56% of this divergence, meaning 2 agencies, looking at the same data, can reach meaningfully different conclusions about the same company. For global companies that report to investors across jurisdictions, this is not a minor calibration issue. It means your score with one provider may qualify you for inclusion in an ESG-screened fund, while your score with a different provider triggers an exclusion. EU-based investors consulting ESMA-authorized providers will, over time, have a cleaner view of how those providers construct their ratings. But they will still be consulting providers whose methodologies differ in ways that produce divergent outcomes for the same issuer. The companies most exposed by a more rigorous system. Companies with strong narrative-driven sustainability reports, but underdeveloped underlying data systems, are most exposed by this shift. The ESG landscape has moved from optional, narrative-heavy sustainability disclosures to mandatory disclosure rooted in measurable metrics, internal controls, and audit-ready documentation. That shift did not happen overnight, but the 2026 methodology and regulatory changes accelerate its consequences. Companies that invested early in data infrastructure, verifiable emissions calculations, supplier data systems, assurance-ready reporting processes are better positioned to weather a methodology tightening than those that prioritized public communication over underlying measurement. The problem is that the second group often does not know which category it falls into until a score drops and an investor asks why. What sustainability and C-suite leaders should prioritize now? The immediate priority is a methodological audit, not of the rating providers, but of your own data. Pull the current issuer report from each provider your institutional investors use. Identify the indicators that drive your score in each system. Then map those indicators against your actual data collection processes, where the data is sourced, how frequently it is updated, and whether it would survive third-party verification. The EU regulations push for provider transparency means the criteria you are being judged against will become more legible. That is a genuine opportunity for companies with strong underlying data to demonstrate performance that was previously invisible to a black box system. It is a significant liability for companies that relied on the opacity of those systems to paper over gaps. The credibility gap is closing. Where it lands for your organization depends on what is actually underneath your disclosure program. You've been listening to Sustainability Soundbites by Environment+Energy Leader. For partnership opportunities, please reach out to our team.